She didn't raise her voice. She raised the room's heartbeat. When Jasmine Crockett exposed Marjorie Taylor Greene's secret PAC funnel on live television, the silence was louder than a scream. Red-faced and cornered, Greene didn't have a rebuttal. Just a tantrum. What was in the folder that sent her storming out of Congress mid-hearing? Before we get to this explosive moment, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe truth still matters, hit subscribe. We've got another jaw-dropping story coming tomorrow. The sky over Capitol Hill was low and heavy, a blanket of gray that matched the mood inside the House Oversight Committee hearing room. Outside, drizzle tapped against the long panes of glass, unnoticed. Inside, the room buzzed with low murmurs. Reporters whispered behind velvet ropes. Congressional aides clipped past one another, coffees in hand, paper folders tucked tight against their chests. Cameras blinked red as they came online, quietly beginning their watch. The hearing hadn't started yet, but the room was already filled with the weight of routine, a room full of people expecting nothing memorable. A typical Wednesday. Jasmine Crockett entered without spectacle. No entourage, no press attention. Just her and Brenda Marino, her longtime aide, moving with quiet purpose. Brenda handed Jasmine a final folder, cleanly tabbed, thin but dense. Jasmine scanned it once, nodded slightly, and took her seat. She didn't adjust the mic. She didn't fidget. She just sat, hands folded, watching. Across the aisle, Marjorie Taylor Greene arrived with a different energy entirely. Clad in a fire truck red blazer, she smiled broadly, chatted with colleagues, and gave a performative wave to one of the cameras. She assumed the room belonged to her. Her heels clacked with purpose. She was there to play offense. The gavel dropped. The committee chair welcomed members and outlined the agenda. Routine campaign finance oversight, updated donor transparency laws, and open statements. The kind of hearing most Americans would scroll past without sound. Greene leaned back in her chair, clearly relaxed. She whispered a joke to the representative seated beside her. Sheila laughed. Jasmine didn't react. She barely blinked. She waited, watched. When it came time for opening remarks, Jasmine didn't immediately speak. She simply opened the folder Brenda had handed her. The manila flap slid open like the start of a countdown. "Before I begin," Jasmine said, her voice calm and level, "I'd like to clarify several financial discrepancies linked to Representative Greene's campaign filings." A stillness snapped across the room. The gallery rustled. Chairs creaked as heads turned. Reporters lifted their pens. The staffer at the transcription machine tapped more urgently. Greene scoffed, smirking. "Is this about the FEC nonsense again?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "Let's talk about Oakstar strategies," she said, raising a single sheet of paper between her fingers like a blade. A camera light went solid. Someone in the gallery murmured, "What's Oakstar?" Greene shifted slightly in her seat, eyes narrowing. The folder in Jasmine's hand didn't look like much, just 10 pages. But as she laid it flat on the desk before her, every movement was deliberate, every second stretched. Silence returned to the room, thicker now. Smashed to black. Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't built for subtlety. Her rise in politics wasn't paved with nuance or quiet coalition building. It was forged in the fires of outrage, viral moments, and culture war theatrics. From the day she entered Congress, she seemed less interested in legislating and more invested in being seen, loud, unfiltered, and defiant. Her base didn't just support her because she fought the establishment, though. She worshipped her because she proudly rejected the trappings of traditional governance. The elite media? Fake news. Congressional norms? Deep state traps. Instead of policy, she wielded spectacle. Committee hearings were arenas. Microphones weren't tools for dialogue. They were launch pads for sound bites. Every moment was calibrated for the algorithm. When she shouted, stormed, or staged walkouts, it wasn't about the issue on the table. It was about the clip that would land on Twitter that night. And it worked. Conservative media turned her into a star. Fundraising soared. MAGA-aligned PACs pumped cash into her re-election efforts. She learned to speak in coded language that activated her audience while staying just outside the bounds of censure. Even when stripped of committee roles, she spun it into martyrdom. Her power wasn't in passing bills. It was in bending the spotlight. But behind the stage light, something more calculated simmered. Her campaign's financials were a maze. Contributions routed through layers of consulting firms with ambiguous names like Oakstar Strategies and Parthenon Communications. Payments labeled as strategic outreach or logistics moved through accounts with no clear endpoint. Some firms shared addresses with Greene's former campaign staffers. Others had no digital footprint at all. She leaned into chaos, but her finances told a different story. Methodical obfuscation. There were rumors, quiet ones, about reimbursements made twice, firms that filed no tax records, and travel expenses that didn't match event logs. It wasn't flashy fraud. It was something more insidious. The quiet laundering of influence through loopholes. Still, Greene never blinked. When journalists asked, she laughed. When watchdog groups filed complaints, she called it a witch hunt. To her followers, every accusation was proof that she was over the target. Even within Congress, few tried to challenge her. Most viewed it as a losing battle. Her media machine was too aggressive, her base too rabid. But she had one vulnerability. One crack in the armor she never acknowledged. Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't fear exposure. She feared being ignored. That's what made Jasmine Crockett dangerous. Crockett didn't yell. She didn't tweet rage. She didn't make noise. She made sense. And in Greene's world, sense was silence. A silence that sucked the oxygen out of every fire she tried to start. Jasmine Crockett never needed volume to be heard. Her power came from precision, the kind that only comes from relentless preparation and an unshakable grasp of the facts. Before Congress, she was a civil rights attorney who fought unjust prosecutions, combed through broken policies, and stood between the vulnerable and the system that failed them. Her voice was calm because her foundation was solid. She didn't need to rattle cages. She just needed to open the right files. When she got wind of inconsistencies in Greene's campaign filings, she didn't tweet about it. She didn't make vague threats on cable news. She called Brenda Moreno into her office, closed the door, and said 3 words: "Find the pattern." What followed was a quiet storm. Brenda, known for her legendary color-coding system, split campaign records into 4 categories: vendor payments, PAC contributions, travel reimbursements, and consulting contracts. Every entry was traced against open-source business databases. Wire transfers were cross-checked with disclosure logs. Photo requests were filed with state regulators, some obscure enough that no one noticed. What emerged wasn't a smoking gun. It was something better, a pattern too organized to be sloppy and too evasive to be innocent. Greene's campaign wasn't just messy. It was opaque by design. Oakstar Strategies received over $240,000, 0 cents in 14 months, but had no functioning website, no known employees, and an address registered to a UPS mailbox in Alpharetta, Georgia. Another firm, billed as a logistics partner, had a tax ID linked to a now-defunct shell company from the 2020 cycle. Jasmine didn't jump to conclusions. She cataloged everything, labeled it, created a digital dashboard where her staff could cross-reference receipts, committee filings, and contractor disclosures in real time. The deeper they looked, the clearer the story became. Someone had built a laundering system using political consulting as a mask. But Jasmine never said the word fraud. Not yet. She didn't need accusations. She needed irrefutable alignment between what Greene said publicly and what her finances showed. Every time a PAC claimed transparency, Jasmine bookmarked it. Every time Greene railed against corruption, Jasmine timestamped it. Every contradiction became a node in her timeline. She watched videos of past hearings, how Greene responded to pressure, when her voice changed, when her hands moved. Jasmine didn't want to beat Greene at her own game. She wanted to dismantle the game altogether. By the time the oversight hearing was scheduled, Jasmine had everything she needed. 10 folders, 48 labeled tabs, 4 classified as probable evasion, 2 marked coordinated narrative. Brenda handed her the final folder the morning of the hearing. Jasmine didn't even have to look inside. She already knew what it held. This wasn't about political revenge. It wasn't even about partisanship. Jasmine didn't care if the person misusing funds wore red or blue. Her job wasn't to humiliate, it was to expose. Her calm was her weapon. Her proof was her power. And when she finally did speak, it wouldn't be loud. It would be undeniable. The room was still as Jasmine Crockett adjusted her microphone. She didn't rush. She never did. Greene sat across the room, arms folded, visibly disinterested. Or performing disinterest. Behind her, two aides whispered and tapped on iPads. On Jasmine's side, Brenda quietly clicked open a digital file and passed her a document. "Let's begin with Oakstar Strategies," Jasmine said, her voice smooth and even. A murmur ran through the gallery. According to FEC records, Oakstar received approximately $130,000, 0 cents from your campaign in the last 14 months. Jasmine continued, flipping open her tabbed binder. "That's not unusual. Campaigns work with consulting firms. But Oakstar is different." Greene tilted her head slightly, lips pursed. Jasmine pressed on. "There is no public record of a physical office. No business license registered in Georgia or D.C., no website, and no functioning phone line. When my team called the number listed on your FEC filings, they got a recording offering discounted auto insurance." Laughter rippled quietly through the chamber. "I ask unanimous consent to enter this record into the hearing file," Jasmine said, passing the printout to the clerk. Greene scoffed and leaned forward. "You're starting with paperwork no one cares about?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "It's not the paperwork that matters, Congresswoman. It's where the money goes." She paused, letting silence do its work. "Oakstar Strategies shares a registered mailing address with a mailbox storefront in Alpharetta. Coincidentally, that location also appears in connection with campaign staffer reimbursements. And here's where it gets interesting. Those reimbursements coincide with campaign contributions from the very PAC that funded Oakstar." Greene tried to interject. "This is nothing." "May I finish?" Jasmine said, her voice calm but firm. The room froze. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. Calm. Direct. Not loud. Not defensive. Just unimpeachable. Greene leaned back. For the first time in the hearing, she seemed uncertain. Her hand tugged at her blazer sleeve. A tell. Jasmine continued. "We are not making accusations. We're asking for clarity. Transparency. If there's a legitimate reason a six-figure sum went to a shell company tied to your own staff, then let's have that discussion." One committee member glanced down at their phone. Another scribbled something on a yellow pad. Greene's usual wall of defiance hadn't gone up. It had cracked. Jasmine closed the folder and looked up. "This isn't personal, but it is public money, public trust, and the public deserves answers." No one interrupted this time. The silence wasn't awkward. It was earned. Greene sat stiffly, chin lifted in defiance, as Jasmine opened the second folder. Brenda handed her a laminated sheet with red highlights. "Next, let's talk about travel," Jasmine said. "We pulled expense records from your campaign filings and cross-referenced them with FEC reimbursements. Several caught our eye." She cleared her throat. "A 6-day stay at the Coeur d'Alene Resort in Idaho, billed as logistics planning. 2 weekend bookings in Scottsdale, Arizona, flagged as DONA outreach. And a 4-night luxury retreat in Sedona with the notation strategic realignment." Jasmine looked up. "Congresswoman, would you prefer I read the invoices aloud, or do you recall the amenities yourself?" Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even a few Republican committee members shifted in their seats. Greene snapped. "You're twisting facts. These were donor events." Jasmine didn't blink. "Then, you'll be pleased to clarify them under oath. I've already submitted the billing records to the committee. They include line items such as private massage therapy, in-room champagne, and executive spa treatments." One of Greene's aides looked up in alarm. Brenda passed another sheet forward. Jasmine nodded to the clerk. I ask to enter into record the documentation for the Sedona lodging and the associated credit card statements filed for reimbursement. The clerk nodded. If you're confident, Congresswoman, you'll have no issue with what comes next, Jasmine said evenly. She handed a transcript to the clerk. This is from a phone call. An open line captured as part of a financial records investigation between a Greene staffer and a PAC coordinator. The subject was recategorizing expenses. Greene's voice sharpened. That transcript's fake. There's no way you have that. Jasmine didn't respond directly. Instead, she addressed the room. We're not in the business of fiction, she said. The transcript includes names, dates, and wire transfer IDs. If there's an error, we welcome clarification. Under oath. Another silence. Jasmine continued, her cadence steady. The line that caught my attention, let's just file it under Oakstar and keep it moving. She wants that spa refund off the books. That line wasn't from me. It was from one of your staffers. Greene turned red. She's lying, Greene shouted. This is political theater. Jasmine tapped her stack of binders calmly. Political theater doesn't include source documents, verified audio, and matching financial trails. The room was tense now. The atmosphere had shifted from drama to dread. Let's not call truth an act, Jasmine added, unless that's what this entire defense is. Jasmine waited until the murmurs died down, then she opened the final folder. I'd like to read a short transcript, she said, between a campaign vendor and a Greene aide regarding the disbursement of $32,000. 0 cents. Brenda passed her the document. Jasmine read, slow and steady. The LLC's active. Will funnel through Martech. It lands clean. Aide. Good. She wants the lake house done by August. Enter. We'll mask it under general outreach. Jasmine paused. The lake house referenced was purchased 2 weeks later by a relative of Congresswoman Greene, under an LLC registered to the same Alpharetta mailbox. Greene stood up. This is fiction. You are making this up. Jasmine raised her eyes calmly. I welcome a denial on record. Gladly, Greene shouted. Jasmine turned another page. This wire transfer, she said, holding it up, was flagged by the bank's fraud department for suspicious routing. It matches the transcript's timeline and destination. This isn't my accusation. It's the bank's documentation. One aide quietly stood and exited the chamber. Another pulled out their phone and began typing, likely tweeting. You're out of line, Greene roared, slamming her hand on the table. You don't get to play judge and jury. I'm neither, Jasmine replied. I'm a witness. And today, the American people are the jury. Chairs squeaked. Reporters scribbled furiously. Brenda tapped her iPad, syncing a backup folder to the committee's secure archive. Then Jasmine delivered the final blow. Before this hearing adjourns, I have one more item, she said. It's a flagged internal memo from a Greene staffer, discussing strategy to create noise to drown out receipts. The exact words were, attack her, question her hair, call her aggressive, make her go viral before the documents do. Gasps echoed. Jasmine closed the binder. This isn't just about money, she said. It's about manipulation, deflection, and using rage to cover truth. Greene looked rattled now. Her voice caught as she tried to form a response. The room watched in silence. Then, suddenly, the chairperson called for a 5-minute recess. The gavel fell. But Greene didn't wait. She stood up, grabbed her folder, and stormed out. Cameras followed. Reporters shouted questions. Her staff trailed behind, flustered. Back in the hearing room, Jasmine remained seated. She didn't look triumphant. She didn't smile. She simply turned to Brenda and said, "Prepare folder 5. It's time we talk about coordination." The storm wasn't over. It had just begun. The moment Marjorie Taylor Greene stormed out of the hearing chamber, cameras still rolling, the internet exploded. Within 15 minutes, the footage was clipped and circulating on X, TikTok, and Instagram, each edit more brutal than the last. One clip slowed down Jasmine Crockett's final words. "There's more." And this time it's personal, overlaying it with cinematic music like it was the climax of a courtroom drama. The caption read simply, "Recedes always win." Another user stitched the moment with Greene's old campaign video where she boasted, "I fear no one," placing the videos side by side like a confession and a reckoning. The hashtag #GreenVS receives trended within an hour. Underneath it, users debated campaign finance laws, meme creators spun out relentless content, and civic educators reposted the full hearing as an example of restraint under fire. One TikTok with over 2 million views cut together the receipts Jasmine displayed with a remixed Kendrick Lamar track, ending with the now no Kynick. Quote, "If you're confident you'll have no issue with what comes next." College students commented that they'd never cared about congressional hearings before, but now they couldn't look away. Then came the hashtag that no one could have predicted. Jasmine cooked. It began as slang, used by Gen Z creators to describe how Jasmine calmly exposed Greene piece by piece, but it took on a life of its own, appearing on mugs, t-shirts, and even digital art on Etsy. A graphic went viral showing Jasmine calmly holding a folder of evidence while flames surrounded Greene, her face frozen mid-interruption. Even educators got in on it. A Harvard government professor posted the clip with the caption, "Future textbook chapter, Accountability Theater." When truth met spectacle. What set this moment apart was its tone. Crockett never raised her voice. She didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She presented documents, calmly requested time to finish, and let the silence do the rest. It wasn't just dramatic. It was dignified, and people noticed. One viral post from a nurse in Detroit simply said, "We're so used to seeing folks shout." But this is what power looks like. Fox News scrambled to reshape the narrative. Tucker Carlson's substitute host called it an ambush by the radical left, claiming Greene was targeted for her courage. But their clips fell flat. In contrast, CNN aired the full 11-minute confrontation unedited during primetime. Anderson Cooper opened with, "What happens when noise meets preparation? You get tonight's story." MSNBC brought in legal analysts to break down Jasmine's evidence line by line, calling it the most methodical exposure of financial irregularities on Capitol Hill in years. But it wasn't just networks. Podcasts erupted. YouTubers posted 40-minute breakdowns. TikTokers created dance routines using Jasmine's calm voice as audio overlays. One satirical video featured someone impersonating Greene slamming a door every time Jasmine said verified source or independent. In a time when the political battlefield was increasingly performative, Jasmine's demeanor cut through like a scalpel. She didn't attack Greene. She simply unwrapped the truth in front of the country and let it stand. A new archetype was forming, one where composure wasn't weakness but strategy. Her silence between sentences, once seen as hesitancy. By midnight, the House Oversight Committee's official YouTube page had more than 2.3 million new views, most of them from users aged 18 to 34. Politico ran a headline that summed up the shift. Crockett didn't speak louder, she spoke better. And beneath it, a quote from one of Jasmine's former clients from her civil rights days. She never came to destroy. She came to reveal. By the next morning, the hearing room had a different energy. Members returned to their seats with clipped words and hushed tones. The press gallery was now packed. Photographers leaned over one another like they were at a celebrity trial. Marjorie Taylor Greene, now flanked by 2 senior aides, re-entered the chamber wearing a navy suit with a flag pin, her signature red blazer traded for something more subdued. Her expression was taut, jaw clenched, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Jasmine Crockett was already seated, calm and composed, leafing through a folder. Her aide, Brenda Moreno, sat beside her, sorting through a second stack of tabbed documents. The chairman gave one session back into order. Without waiting for preamble, Jasmine requested time to resume her statement. The chairman nodded, and the room held its breath. Jasmine opened a new folder and placed a single sheet on the table in front of her. "This document," she began, "was obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request and then analyzed by a certified forensic document examiner. It has been authenticated." She slid the paper forward. "This is a draft memorandum of agreement between Representative Greene and an energy sector investor whose business interests directly benefited from House Resolution 387. A resolution Greene not only co-sponsored but fast-tracked through committee." A gasp rippled through the audience. Greene's head snapped toward the chairman. "This is a coordinated smear," she said through gritted teeth. Jasmine didn't blink. She tapped the bottom of the document. "You'll notice the signature line. It reads Marjorie Taylor Greene, principal partner." She paused, then added, "And it's dated 3 days before the resolution was introduced." Brenda clicked a remote, and the document appeared on a large monitor. The signature was unmistakable, curved, sharp, and precisely like the one on Greene's FEC filings. Jasmine continued, "We submitted this document for third-party analysis, time-strength metadata, pen stroke analysis, and source file verification all confirm its authenticity. You'll find the full report in tab 8 of your packets." Greene leaned into her microphone. "I never signed that document. I don't even know that investor." Jasmine didn't flinch. "Then you'll have no issue explaining why this same individual donated the maximum allowable amount to your campaign the following day, and again 2 months later, through a separate PAC." The hearing room grew still. Jasmine flipped another page. "This memo outlines deregulation terms that align line for line with language in H.R. 387, language that wasn't in the public draft until 5 days after this signature was dated." She glanced at Greene. "So either the investor can time travel, or someone gave him access in advance." Greene's voice raised. "You're playing games with my name." Jasmine replied, "No, ma'am. I'm reading what's under it." The chairman asked for order, but even then, the damage had landed. Members of the committee began whispering. Brenda handed out printed copies of the memo to those who requested it. One member asked, "Do we have confirmation this was uploaded with committee files?" Jasmine answered, "Yes, along with notarized statements and email metadata from both parties' counsel." Greene shook her head and flipped through her notes. "This is a witch hunt." But her voice lacked the fire from the day before. For the first time, it cracked slightly. Jasmine sat back, letting the weight of the silence speak for her. The document stood on its own. The moment became immortalized when C-SPAN's cameras caught Greene staring at the signature frozen. That single frame was clipped and used in a dozen viral tweets when the receipts stare back. A week later, Greene's office released a statement calling the document a fabrication meant to discredit a freedom-loving American. But the public already had screenshots, audit files, and an unshakable image of what happened in that room. A document, a signature, and a silence that broke her armor. It started with a whisper. A clipped video posted to TikTok by a high school civics student in Des Moines. Jasmine Crockett sat perfectly still on the screen, her voice measured, her tone unshaken. The clip captured her calmly sliding a folder across the hearing table while Marjorie Taylor Greene raised her voice and pointed fingers. The caption read, "Don't yell, just print receipts." Within hours, it hit 1 million views. By the next morning, it was projected onto Times Square. The moment had become not just political, it was cultural. Memes flooded social media. Twitter was ablaze with side-by-side shots of Crockett's calm expression next to Greene's flustered outbursts. A clip of Jasmine's quote, "I told the truth and I told it with receipts," was set to gospel choirs, lo-fi beats, and even K-pop mashups. TikTokers remixed it into dances, lip-sync challenges, and motivational edits. Teens who'd never sat through a full congressional hearing before were suddenly sharing annotated clips of the testimony like it was a season finale. One post read, "She brought facts, not vibes, and still made her opponent fold." In classrooms, educators found a new teaching tool they hadn't expected. Within a week, Crockett's exchange had been added to journalism school syllabi across the country. At Columbia, a professor titled a new lecture, "Silence, Strategy, and the Power of Receipt." At Howard, Students dissected Crockett's rhetorical techniques and sourced every document she referenced, not to check her, but to understand how truth could be weaponized with discipline. For a generation raised on political chaos, her performance raised on... It wasn't just loud. It wasn't performative. It was composed, factual, and surgical. Students wrote essays comparing her approach to legendary civil rights lawyers and whistleblowers. Some even submitted theses titled after her most viral lines. Late-night hosts jumped in, too. On The Daily Show, the segment was called Greene versus the Spreechy Assassin. On SNL, a skit featured an actress dressed as Greene attempting to delete files off a fake laptop, while Congresswoman Crockett calmly read each line from printed documents. The punchline? "I printed it in triplicate." The studio audience roared. But even comedians acknowledged it wasn't just funny, it was a shift. One host said it best: "We've seen shouting, we've seen spectacle, but Crockett? She showed us what the quiet storm looks like." Retailers moved quickly. T-shirts, mugs, and posters flooded Etsy and Redbubble with the phrase, "Don't yell, just print receipts." Even major brands posted cryptic tweets using Crockett's lines to subtly promote their products. A stationery company trended for its post, "Need receipts? We've got the paper." The phrase crossed generations. A retired librarian tweeted, "Needs half offered until Thurgood Marshall in heels." An NBA star quoted her in a post-game interview. Even a kindergarten teacher shared how her students asked, "What does receipts mean?" after hearing it at home. The resonance wasn't partisan, it was personal. It gave voice to people who'd long been told they had to be louder to be heard. Crockett became an icon not just for what she said, but how she said it. Steady, prepared, and with nothing but the truth in her hands. In a country exhausted by noise, her quiet fury became the cultural reset. The moment Jasmine Crockett requested a formal ethics inquiry, Capitol Hill felt the shift. What had begun as a routine oversight hearing turned into a political thunderclap. Within 24 hours, the House Ethics Committee confirmed it had opened a preliminary investigation into Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's financial disclosures. The statement was brief, standard language, citing questions regarding use of campaign funds and outside business relationships. But the implications echoed like a warning shot. Greene's allies scrambled to regroup, but the timing couldn't have been worse. The receipts were already public, and the internet wasn't letting go. Behind closed doors, Republican leadership was in damage control. Some issued cautious defenses. "Let's allow the process to play out." Others turned away altogether. A senior GOP strategist was overheard saying, "We can't protect her from this. Not this time." On conservative talk radio, hosts began to splinter. A few doubled down, blaming the radical left for staging a deep fake circus. But others took a different tone. One longtime radio figure stunned listeners when he said, "This wasn't spin. It was proof. And if we don't take this seriously, voters will." He paused. "They already are." The polls showed it. In Greene's home district, an overnight survey revealed a 9-point drop in her approval rating. Suburban voters, many of whom had supported her based on her outsider persona, were shaken by the evidence. Even some of her most vocal backers expressed concern. One Facebook group renamed itself from Greene 2024 to We Demand Answers. Meanwhile, donors paused contributions. A major PAC quietly scrubbed her from their homepage. Consultants, once eager to appear at her side, stopped returning calls. The political machine that once fueled her fire began pulling the plug. But the most damning blow came from inside her own ranks. An anonymous source leaked a final trove of documents to several journalists: emails, PAC routing diagrams, and charter flight invoices. The metadata confirmed the files came from inside Greene's office, and speculation erupted over the identity of the whistleblower. That night, a breaking report on MSNBC confirmed what many suspected the source was: Melinda Carr, a former aide who'd been dismissed months earlier. Her reason for leaking? "I didn't leave Congress to become part of a cover-up," she said. "The truth deserves sunlight." The new documents were devastating. They showed internal conversations about structuring LLCs to obscure spending, strategies for laundering campaign travel as public outreach, and even a typed draft of a public denial that had never been sent. The most explosive email featured Greene's digital signature, approving a payment memo described as reimbursement for donor meeting expenses, Sedona, with an attached invoice for a 5-star spa retreat. The confirmation was unmistakable. Jasmine hadn't just cracked the armor, she'd exposed the blueprints. Democrats, meanwhile, didn't gloat. They elevated. Crockett's office issued a simple statement. "We did our due diligence. The rest is up to the process." Her restraint became its own headline. No celebration, no grandstanding, just trust in the institutions she held accountable. House leadership echoed the sentiment, calling for transparency, ethics, and equal treatment under the law. By week's end, calls mounted for Greene's removal from committee assignments. Behind the scenes, her staff was reduced to whispers. The firebrand who once owned every camera in the room was now avoiding them. The political fallout wasn't just reputational, it was structural. Her power was fading not because of a scandal, but because someone finally brought the receipts. The hearing was over, but the image remained. Jasmine Crockett stood still, shoulders square, eyes unwavering, as a storm raged in front of her. Marjorie Taylor Greene, red-faced and relentless, had raised her voice, waved her hands, called names, but the room remembered none of that. What lingered was the silence Jasmine held. The manila folder, the pointed finger at a page, the moment she asked, not shouted, "Would you like me to read the transaction history, or do you recall the amount yourself?" And in that pause, something deeper cracked, not just a political facade, but the illusion that volume equates to truth. Clips of the confrontation swept the country. Cable news hosts played them on a loop, but it was the people who made it live. Teachers showed it in classrooms during Civics Week. Teenagers mimicked Jasmine's phrasing in debate competitions. A silent TikTok trend emerged. Creators sitting calmly while text appeared over them. "Don't yell. Just bring receipts." Even in noisy times, it seemed the calm voice of faith had found resonance. A new phrase joined the political lexicon, scribbled on protest signs and graduation caps alike. Power without truth is just noise. A week later, Jasmine spoke at a town hall in Dallas. It was packed wall to wall, folding chairs crammed into a community center gymnasium, camera crews shoulder to shoulder at the back. There was no red carpet, no teleprompter, no fiery intro music, just a wooden podium and a woman holding a binder. She didn't pace. She didn't raise her voice. She opened with a line that echoed through the room and across the country. "They told me not to push too hard, but I didn't come to Washington to play safe." The audience roared. She waited, then delivered the line that would be replayed for days. "Power without truth is just noise, and I will never let noise win." What struck the crowd wasn't just her courage, it was her method. Jasmine had done what so few politicians dared. She'd let the documents do the talking. In an age where chaos gets attention, she had reminded the country that clarity gets remembered, that hearings weren't just theater, that democracy didn't have to be loud to be strong. Outside the venue, young activists held handmade signs, "Show the receipts, truth greater than spin." "Crockett 2028, an elderly woman in a church hat whispered. "She reminds me of Barbara Jordan." A high schooler beside her added, "She reminds me of what honesty used to look like." The contrast was generational, but the admiration was shared. Jasmine had become something rare, a public servant who didn't confuse performance with purpose. As she walked out of the town hall, a small group of reporters trailed her. She held the same binder. One paused to ask, "What's next for you?" She looked at him, quiet for a second. "More questions," she said. "Because truth doesn't end when the cameras turn off." She kept walking. The cameras followed, not because she raised her voice, but because her words stayed in the room long after she left it. So here's where we leave you. If you're tired of the noise, if you still believe facts should matter in politics, subscribe, share, join the conversation, because we're not done watching, and we're definitely not done asking.